place that lets you know you're not the only nerdy true believer who's around. The comic book store, 'cause that's where the books live, but it's also much more. It's the heart of the art form that we all adore. Your friendly neighborhood comic book store. Out among the stacks of new releases, browsing with your future new best friends. You're gonna find a book you'll love to pieces. The girl behind the counter recommends dollar books and shelves of graphic novels. Titles old and new, you'll find them all. With action figures, board games, toys, and models to add to your new Comic Wednesday haul. The comic book store, 'cause that's where the books live, but it's also much more. It's the heart of the art form that we all adore. Your friendly neighborhood comic book store.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's Source Material Live. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And November has become Chris Sheehan Month. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Chris Sheehan. How do you do, sir?
Hey, how's it going? Got a little thing going on with my voice right now, but I suppose it stands to reason since my hometown of Arizona, somewhere in Arizona, it finally broke from being, in the 90s plus in the temperatures, and no sooner does that happen than I'm coming under the weather, so I can't even be outside to enjoy the actual bearable temperatures. So, and the 5 minutes of the year that we actually get of autumn, I'm going to miss it. So, there's that. But I'm very psyched to take a trip back to Opal City today.
Yes, we had a calendar full of comics that we were going to do based on movies and whatnot, and then movies died. They went away.
They did.
And that left me with nothing to cover in terms of comics. Not a whole lot to synergize with. We covered AEW wrestling earlier today. There's nothing, no comic books that really synergize with that. So, I've been having Chris Sheehan come on this show now for a while, and he said, "Hey, is it every once in a while? Could I pick a book?" And at first I said, "No, I'm in charge." But then, I took a deep breath, and I got off my high horse, and I said, all right, tell you what, why don't you go ahead and pick a book? And then the entire month of November fell apart for me.
It did.
So he picks all the books for the month of November. Isn't that wonderful? And the first one he picked was Starman, Sins of the Father, which encompasses Starman issues from 1994, issues 0 through 5. So, Chris, I'm going to go ahead and give my jaw a rest for a moment, and I'm going to let you explain in great detail why you picked this book and why you wanted to talk about it tonight.
Well, mostly, I have a thing where when I discover books at a certain age, of my own personal age here, I discovered Starman when I was a late teen, early 20s, and it was a very different time in my life, and it's books that I discovered in that weird little window that I have so much trouble going back and revisiting. I don't know if it's just I can't get myself into the gestalt of it, or maybe I can and I just realize how much I wasted of my life since then, and it just it sours the entire reading experience for me. But Starman was one of those books, a book that I absolutely adored when I discovered it, probably 1999, 2000-ish, and I've tried several times over to revisit it and never get that far. I just can't recapture that same magic as the first time I did it. And so having it here on the docket on the show, it gave me an impetus to actually sit through and push through and do it, which I'm very, very excited to have been able to do, because this is a very, very special book. This is a book that is, if you'd read it, if you would have read it back in the 90s, you'd flip back to the cover every few pages to see if there's a Vertigo logo on it. It doesn't feel like something. It's not Superman, it's not Batman, it's not the Flash, it's not the Justice League, but it exists in the same world, and it's on the fringes of that. It's not quite Vertigo. It is a little precious. There are some very precious characters in here that will wax poetic and purple for pages at a time. That's looking at the shade right there. But this is a very special book, and to have the opportunity to force myself to reread it and to discuss it, that's really, really cool. And I'm really happy that we're together tonight to discuss it.
So our first issue, issue 0. Now explain that one to me. Why are we starting with 0?
Ah, yes. Now if you fall in love with Jack Knight, the Starman of this volume, as we're talking about this, you might be happy to find out that if you wanted to buy his first appearance, you could probably get it for $0.25. Because his first appearance was in 0 Hour. And 0 Hour, they printed probably 50 bajillion copies of every single issue of that. And I think half of them went directly into quarter bins. So anytime you're in a garbage shop or a cheapo bin or a back room at a comic store, you will probably be able to find multiple copies of this fella's first appearance at 0 Hour number 1. And, well, he's got an issue 0 because he came out of 0 Hour. So all the books in, I believe it was cover date either October or November of 1994. This is after 0 Hour wrapped up. 0 Hour, there's a whole episode on 0 Hour in Weird Comics history over at the Chris and Reggie channel, but 0 Hour started with issue number 4 and counted down 3, 2, 1, and 0. The gist of it is that Hal Jordan, the Green Lantern of the Silver Age into the Bronze Age, he lost his mind. During Emerald Twilight, he wanted to rebuild his city. Coast City was destroyed during the Reign of the Supermen event. So he wanted to rebuild it. The Guardian said, no, you can't do that. That's an abuse of your power. And so he snapped. And he became like the biggest villain in the DC universe for a time, and he was called Parallax. And so with 0 Hour, the premise is he wanted to restart everything. He wanted to start everything from scratch. And it's actually almost heroic the way he wants to do it. It's weird. I have a very odd relationship with the Hal Jordan of this era, but I find him to be far more heroic than a lot of people seem to. But 0 Hour, counted down to 0, was supposed to fix all the problems that came out of Crisis. It was supposed to just basically, put the white out over the problems and let everything move forward. So after 0 Hour ended, the entire DC line put out 0 issues. So we didn't restart books. So it wasn't like we were getting another Action Comics number 1. It just, instead of getting Action Comics number, say, 709, we got Action Comics number 0. And the origins in these 0 issues, or the things that were set up and established in these 0 issues, were going to lay the foundation for the DC universe going forward. So all the weirdness, all the stuff, the hiccups from Crisis, all the stuff that was inconvenient, they excised. Things that were convenient or that they hadn't thought of yet were introduced. It was really just laying a foundation for the DC universe going forward. And so, Starman, he was being launched around that time. He got a 0 issue. And, I mean, I couldn't imagine if you were, like, looking for this in a quarter bin or anywhere, any bin, say, and you find Starman number 1, you pick it up and you take it home and you think, hey, I'm on the ground floor, and then you're like, wait, nope, I missed issue 0 because this issue 0 actually builds into issue 1. So that's my very, very long way of saying it came out of 0 Hour.
All right. Well, our first 0 issue here of Starman, 1994, was written by James Robinson. The inker, penciler was Tony Harris. Another inker was Wade Von Grawbadger. Colorist Gregory Wright. Editor Jim Spivey and Archie Goodwin. Neil Posner worked on this, I guess. And we have another letterer here. Okay, John Workman. Mm-hmm. All right, so according to Comic Vine, with the original Starman retired, his old foe, the Mist, continues an old vendetta against Starman as he returns and takes the life of the hero's oldest son. Now Starman's rebellious younger son, Jack, is forced into a role that he does not want and has spent a lifetime denying. Yeah, so this first issue sets up I think it's a 3 or 4 issue story arc involving the Mist and the Shade. And it's kind of like a Nightfall type of thing where the Mist is seeking revenge on the elder statesman Starman and his sons, and he's trying, he's pecking at various aspects of the original Starman's life to cause him pain, but he's also setting about having criminals run amok in Opal City so that the cops are distracted.
Yeah. Yeah, there were small crimes to cover up for bigger crimes and bigger crimes to cover up for the biggest crimes. So it was a very labyrinthine sort of plan here from The Mist, but this is a really good issue. I love it's one of those things, and we're going to talk a little bit about nostalgia in just a minute, because this book is brimming in nostalgia as a product and as a concept. And I wasn't here for this. I didn't buy this issue when it hit the stands here, so I knew this volume of Starman as being Jack Knight. But I could imagine, like, if you buy this and you see David get killed, like, within the first, 2 or 3 pages of the volume, I wish I could have been there as it was coming out so I could have reacted properly, And a lot of this, as I was saying, with nostalgia, Jack Knight's whole thing is that he runs a junk store, And I think that's perfect for the tone of this book, because Opal City is kind of an old-fashioned town. It's not Gotham, it's not Metropolis. It's like its own little thing, kind of stuck in its own little time bubble here. And the fact that our point of view character is a guy who is like obsessively stuck in these time bubbles is such a fun thing to have here. And there's a page in this issue where Jack is looking into his junk store. And I mean, it's not a super detailed page, but like looking at it, you can almost smell it. It's got that real. It feels very nostalgic, and it's nostalgic for an era that I never lived, but I still feel like a wistful sort of desire to have been there. And it's actually, anytime I think about this book, and I've talked not so much about this book in particular on the air before, but books of this type, I always want to know, because I mean, Jack, he sells nostalgia. He's a nostalgia broker. And I like asking people about their ideas of nostalgia, and if they can pinpoint in their mind when they feel like nostalgia went from being a concept and turned into a product. So do you have any sort of feelings or any sort of timestamps in your head where you think that nostalgia became something that you can sell, something that you can buy, something that's available?
I think I want to answer that question by referencing the new Star Wars trilogy. And a lot of people got pretty upset. I don't know if you saw the new Star Wars movies at all, but a lot of people got annoyed with the first one because they felt like it was just a reference to A New Hope. That it was, South Park kind of made fun of it. They talked about member berries, and then like Screen Junkies went crazy with that for a while, where and they talked a little bit about this even with Jurassic World, where it's like, hey, remember Chewbacca? Remember member berries? And South Park did a really funny thing where they actually made like actual member berries, like they like bunches of grapes. They're going, remember Chewbacca? Remember dinosaurs? I think culturally, within the past 10 years, there has been a concerted effort to recreate things that people hold dear to them, because the people with the money and the people who make decisions to create things executives, and I'm talking about in movie and television, especially
Certainly.
movies, they know that a safe bet is something people recognize and remember. That's
Yes,
why
it's comfortable.
Yeah, that's why you get all these reboots. You get like new Tomb Raider movies next year. There's going to be another Mortal Kombat. Stuff has name recognition and value, and it doesn't always work, and it's not always a successful formula. But I think they, my father-in-law complains all the time that there's no new ideas in Hollywood. I mean, there are, but they end up on Netflix.
Sure.
They end up on television. The movie industry sort of banks on member berries.
Absolutely.
So it would not surprise me if they were mining nostalgia, because I think that even though I'm referencing the last 10 years, I would say it's probably a common enough thought among people who are creative types that if you put things that are familiar and peg joy for people out there, they will come to it. You will make money.
Yeah, I think so.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, I usually put like my timestamp. This is something that I've talked about with a few different people, and we generally talk about things like eras and real, like, bigger world events to kind of maybe not so much make it happen, but facilitate the sort of industry to begin. And things like World War II ending, things like kids not having to work anymore, things like labor laws, kids having free time, basically. And one of the things that I thought of as it pertains to selling nostalgia is the advent of oldies radio stations. I feel like that might have been like where the worm turned, because you could actually live in the past then. I've got Sirius Radio, and I'm usually, now I'm on the Christmas channels, but usually I'm on the 90s channels. I'm on like Lithium for the alternative stuff, and the 90s on 9.
That's the one that my wife and I can kind of agree on.
Yeah. So it's like, I know exactly what that is. My wife will put on like Pop 2K, and I'll be like, get that shit out of here. I don't know what a Dua Lipa is, and I don't want to know. But if it's like old Pearl Jam or something, or Counting Crows, it's like, yeah, let's do that. But I always think back to, like, I don't know when it was. I've never done the research on it, but I would love to know how people felt when they heard as a grown-up, heard songs that they used to listen to as kids, because as a product, they weren't readily available, and especially on the go, if you're in your car or something and you get to hear something that you jammed out to as a kid. I think that's I don't know, I think that music has the power to really get into your head, and I don't know if that was...
I'm going to reference something. If you haven't had... I know you don't watch AEW, but if you haven't had an opportunity to go on YouTube and just watch the package for Kenny Omega, and we talked about this on the review show today, myself and Bailey, but the package for Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page was set to Cinderella's "Don't Know What You've Got Till It's Gone." It's fucking great. But so you talk about nostalgia, and it's like half of what makes me love that package is the use of a I think like an 80s Cinderella song.
It's funny. Wait, was it you that said with Guardians of the Galaxy, where it's not a good movie, it's just they use good music or something like that? Was it you?
No, I love Guardians of the Galaxy.
I don't remember who I was talking to, but someone had said like it's like they knew how to do a cool soundtrack.
Yeah, well, to whoever said that, they're keying into music can really change an opinion of somebody. They can absolutely... You can get away with maybe something that's middle of the road or mediocre with attaching music that people like to it, because that psychologically taps into people's emotions.
Yeah.
Look,
you create a link, yeah.
If I hear Here I Go Again by Whitesnake, whatever I'm looking at the time, I will have a positive thought about.
What are those psych tests where you have to like hit left or right when you see a picture or something, and oh God, what are they called? Ah, man, it's a it's a digital psychology test where like they'll show you a picture, but there'll be like a triangle on it, and they'll say anytime you see a triangle, you have to hit like left, and every time you see a square, you have to hit right, and they'll try to form the like the positive and negative reinforcement with whatever picture's there. So I mean, like positive will be left, and you'll be like seeing kittens, yes, left, kittens left, a juicy steak left, dead baby left. It's like they'll try to like mess with your mind to see if you're able to follow the instructions. It's very weird, but yeah, I get you there. It's the attachment you get, or the link I guess you build, is very powerful, and all that to say, I really like how this book really dives into nostalgia here and does so. And I mean, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but they actually use some like meta DC history in here, which is really great.
So my first thing I wanted to talk about with this book, from my vantage point, was the relationship between David, Jack, and Dad, and how rough Jack is treated by his father.
Yeah.
Like, I was immediately like keyed into the book and interested in what was going on because of the relationship between Dad and Jack. Mm-hmm. And it's not easy to read, but I was hooked because of their relationship. And then later on in the story, and this is getting a little ahead of ourselves, but later on in the story, when the mist attacks the mom's
the museum wing.
Museum wing, and Jack is like, I don't want to be a hero, and I don't want to do this, and I do want to get out of town, as my father is suggesting, but I'm not going to let the memory of my mother, get attacked.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's really powerful. You know, I have to say, we've had this run of really light reads where the shows were like a half an hour long because there wasn't much to talk about. But here, there's a lot going on with this book, and it's not a terribly complex story.
No, it's just very well done. It's so many layers to the interpersonal relationships. And I mean, this is the first 6 issues of the volume. The volume runs, I believe, 80. And this is really just the tip of the iceberg. It gets a lot deeper, and the cast gets. We're going to meet some police officers, some carrot top police officers who are just characters, but they're going to become part of the family of this book, and it's really it's very, very good stuff here. I love the fact that this is such a complex relationship here, and later on, I don't remember which issue it was particularly, but Jack starts having like he's remembering things, and then he realizes that he's remembering them wrong.
Yeah.
So it's like I love that because it's just so human, and it really goes to show how far you can get into your own head to where the narrative is what you think it is, when it could very well be the exact opposite. And the whole thing here is about Jack being reluctant, and David being just like gung ho. I want to be like Dad, and that will pay off. That'll pay off in the last issue in this volume. They'll have a really, really awesome conversation, the first of many, actually. But the fact that he is the underachiever, he is he's the alternative kid. He's got the weird hair, he's got the tattoos, he's got the junk shop. It's so solid in that. I don't know, it's weird to say, and it's probably corny to say, but a lot of the things that I'll review or discuss as it pertains to, I guess, any consumable media is a question that I'll ask is, does it have heart? I don't know what the hell heart is. If I saw it, I know. If I hear it, I know. But I couldn't tell you off the top of my head what heart is. And this book is just overflowing with whatever the hell heart is. It's really wonderful, and I feel like even talking about it is maybe doing a disservice to it, because I would love for people who haven't read this to run out and grab it.
Anything else about issue number 0? If not, we'll move on to issue number 1.
Let me flip through here real quick. Issue 0, we meet the Mist family. Now Nash, the daughter, who is stuttering here, she'll get over that though. She is, not to spoil anything, but she is going to be like the big bad of this. And she will have a very complicated relationship with Jack. And and she's scary. She's scary and she's brutal, and she takes advantage. So it's a really cool introduction here, because I'd totally forgotten about how wallflowery she is here in the early going. All I know her as is being very ruthless. So seeing her here, like just in love with her brother, like in awe of her brother, like her brother is awesome and her father is cool, and she's just there. It really speaks to how they're going to build this character and the progression of her story. It's really good stuff. I think the only other thing about this issue that might be worth saying is that on the last page there's a mistake. Jack calls his brother Danny, and it's David.
All right, so far so good. I was definitely hooked from the first issue. A riot rocks. This is issue number 1. A riot rocks Opal City while an ailing Ted Knight recovers from a recent attack. The action forces Ted's son Jack Knight to pick up Starman's cosmic rod and directly oppose the villainy he swore he'd never face. Is this his calling or his doom? So I love when they do a superhero television show where, at least in the beginning, it's not easy. And they're not good at it. And
they stumble.
I remember Grant Gustin's Flash from the CW. I think he was talking to Kid Flash or somebody else, where he was like, "Yeah, my first year I was terrible at this. I got myself into all kinds of weird situations that if I hadn't had Team Flash to get me out of, I'd be dead." And I think that's good. I think instantly being, this is sort of my issue with Superman. Instantly being good at being a superhero doesn't make for good storytelling. So I like the fact I like the fact that Jack struggles and he loses one of the cosmic rods right in the beginning, and he nearly gets killed a second time. Yeah, and
he loses. Actually, that's one thing we didn't mention in the first issue. He loses the belt. Sylvester Pemberton's belt. In the to what's her face or what's his face actually, the Mist's brother or the Mist's son, I should say. But he loses the belt, and now he loses a rod. It's good. It's nice seeing that not only is he reluctant, he's just not very good at it. I think that's really cool, and it really adds to how much this character is going to have to grow into both his ability and his desire to have the ability. So it's good stuff.
What else about issue number 1 did you want to talk about?
Issue 1, there was the attack. We saw what's his face, Jack's father, Ted Knight, not Ted Baxter from Mary Tyler Moore, but he gets hit in the head with a brick in a panel that is funny, but it shouldn't be funny. Mm-hmm. Like he's just walking and a brick hits him in the head. It's pretty funny just to look at, but yeah, the attack happened, so that's why Ted is in the hospital as we go into the first issue. You're talking about issue 1. We just talked about issue 0. I'm sorry. We meet the O'Dares, which is cool. The O'Dares are a police family. They are the Irish red-headed family here who their father was saved by Ted Knight back in the Golden Age. So they feel indebted to the Starman family, basically. So they're always going to be here. I think it's funny how when they introduce Hope, she looks like she's like posing for a blue jeans ad.
Yeah.
Like, it's very, very weird. She's just way posed out, which doesn't fit with the story. But let's see here. Let me flip through to where we meet the Shade for the first time here, I believe. And the Shade is a acquired taste, I think I could say. What did you think of the Shade as he was waxing here?
I liked it. I'm not much for verbose characters, but I thought the Shade was within the parameters of acceptability, and I like where they take him in this story to where you think he's on the Mist side, but he's kind of on his own side. He has his own agenda.
For sure, yeah. No, the Mist, not the Mist, just the Shade. They build him up really well here. When I first started reading this, though, I thought he was going to be a hurdle I'd have to jump, but you fall for the guy pretty quick in this. It's just more a testament to the writing in this series that they were able to do what they did with the Shade. Who, I don't know that. It's weird when you take characters from the Golden Age and you bring them to the present year, whatever year that might be. It feels like you can go like one of two ways, right? You could take, say, Starman, Ted Knight, and you could put him like in a leather jacket and give him a mohawk and all that stupid crap that you think of, like, this is the now. We got to make him look like this. Or you can make Starman into what's her face, Courtney. What the hell was her name? Stargirl.
Oh, yeah.
They could just have her instead of him. You could do all sorts of weird stuff. What's his face? Robinson. What he did was that he made everything work. He didn't rob Peter to pay Paul as it pertained to taking a character, taking a concept from from the days of yore, the 30s and 40s, bringing them into the 90s. And not making him seem goofy, not making him seem out of place, and not changing him so he'd fit. It's really, I mean, James Robinson is like the Jeff Johns ilk, where he has the ability to do that. As this was going on, I mean, just a year or so after this, the JSA would be launched, which was the new retelling or the bringing to the present year the Justice Society, which another one of those things could have went one of two ways. It could have been let's give them all nose rings and mohawks, or we could bring them the classic characters here and just make it work. And with someone like the Shade, with someone like anybody in the JSA Golden Age character, it's a hard task, and we see here it's pulled off really, really well.
Issue number 2, The Mist meets with fellow Starman villain The Shade to form a plan of attack on Opal City, while new Starman Jack Knight assembles a costume to face the Mist daughter. But before diving into battle, Jack detours to a fortune teller store for a quick glimpse at a possible outcome for the battle. I like the exchange he has with the fortune teller. I was wondering where that was going, and it seemed weird at first, but I kind of liked, he's in there just to catch his breath, and get out of harm's way for a moment. And the fortune teller just tells him the story about how, she was in this small town and she read fortunes, and eventually people just sort of got bored of it and stopped coming. So she's moving on to greener pastures. And then she tells his fortune, and he's like, "You're going to be a hero. You're going to be a great hero. Things are going to happen for you." And Jack's like, "Don't tell me that. I don't." This is a one-time thing.
Now there's a line from the fortune teller here. Was named Charity. She says, "Down south, I had a house, big and damp. Locals they had a name for it, the Dark Mansion. They called it, the Dark Mansion they called it, and they'd come and hear my stories, my forbidden tales." I mentioned there was some meta DC in here. Back in the early 70s, there was a DC comic called Forbidden Tales of Dark Mansion. So that's a reference to an old horror anthology, which I thought was really cool. And I'm sure I did not get that back in 1999 when I first read this. But knowing, being a fake-ass comics historian now, that jumped right off the page at me. I thought that was really cool that they would mention that.
That is interesting.
Yeah, it's one of those things where if you noticed it, you get tickled. If you didn't notice it, it doesn't matter. And that's like the best way to do these callbacks. I love Jack putting together his costume. It's so silly. Also, what Jack does here, he's trying to put together his collection again. He's trying to rebuild his store because his store was destroyed. So he's making deals for just junk. He's trying to get good prices on garbage so he can restock whatever store he's about to reopen here. Here we have Jack.
That's what I like about him. I get frustrated a little bit with the A-list heroes who don't seem to have a life outside of the Watchtower.
Sure.
They just live in the Watchtower waiting for shit to happen.
Exactly.
I like the fact that he's cool. I I want to do my part and I want to step up, but I still have to live a life. I still have to pay bills. I still have to eat.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's in a weird way. It's like I used to work over the road. I drove around town here doing windshield repairs. But anytime I'd see a store that I thought might catch my fancy, I'd pop in there myself. I'd be off the job to look to indulge in my habits and my hobbies and my obsessions and stuff. So I feel like that might be something that a lot of comics enthusiasts can relate to. I think Jack is a character that, if he were, there's that whole attainability factor with like certain actresses or actors, if that's your thing, where it's like he's attainable, because he's a normal guy.
Yeah.
And he's not Superman. He's not Batman. He is someone you could see yourself talking to. And I mean, and he spent a page talking about the smell of old stuff.
But he's also like not the Punisher. Like the Punisher doesn't have any magic powers either.
Sure.
But, the Punisher is like the baddest soldier
Very
ever
one-minded.
and like driven by revenge and all that. Like
Tunnel
this is just a
vision, too.
guy trying to make hay out of a shit situation.
Exactly. And he's very, very relatable to a lot of the folks reading, which I mean, I think this was like a perfect storm sort of situation because this came out 94, 95 when a lot of folks who came in during the hoi polloi extreme era were getting a little older. We were young teens when Young Blood came out, but we were older teens and college students when something like this came out. This matured with an entire generation of comics fans, and I mean, it was like the perfect sort of a transitional book from childhood to adulthood. Really, really good. We also have Jack meeting Nash for the first time here, and he's very nearly killed by her. She lets him go. And will regret doing so pretty soon. But this was
she didn't make a great decision here.
No, very, very bad decision. But another great issue, another great conversation with the father, with Ted, and I like that the whole time here he keeps saying he's like, I'm not going to be Starman. I'm not going to be Starman. Oh, by the way, I need a new Star Rod. And he's like, well, why would someone who's not going to be Starman ask me for a Star Rod? He's like, shut up, just get it for me. It's really, really fun. And he sent to like a storage facility, which is another one of those maybe not so much a feast for the eyes, but it's interesting because you get to see a lot of weird shit.
It reminded me of the Power Man show, the Luke Cage on Netflix. Cause there's a scene where he escapes from the prison, and he's got this thing on his head from whatever mind control they were doing on him, and he's got to get out of the prison jumper, so he pulls clothing off a clothing line, and it's like a yellow blouse and blue pants. And
so it's his 70s costume, yep.
Yeah. And he goes, I look like a damn fool. And it reminded me, when I was reminded of that as I was reading this, because he's going through the stuff and he grabs part of a costume. He's like, yeah, no.
Yeah, it was just a giant star on it. But yeah, this kind of reminds me of if you've ever read Incredible Hulk Future Imperfect.
I have. We actually did it on the show.
Okay, cool. There's a 2-page spread in that, I believe. It's been a long time since I've read it, but there's a 2-page spread, I believe, where you see Rick Jones's trophy room. Mm-hmm. And it's all this just Marvel minutia, It's like all this cool stuff. And this scene, while not to that level, it's also not drawn by George Perez, but it's cool in that same way where it's like you're just pointing stuff out as like, oh, that's very, very cool stuff. And it's just stuff that you wouldn't expect to see. But the rod, I forgot that the rod didn't automatically or didn't immediately look like the rod that I'm used to seeing Jack Knight carry with the little hook on the end of it. But good stuff. And it was the finishing touch on basically what this character is going to look like. And what do we get here? We got Shade. we get Shade actually doing his thing here and taking Ted Knight to the Mist and sparing the O'Dares. And he's very, very clear in the fact that he wants them to remember that he spared them because it'll make sense later or something like that. But just another wonderful issue. Another fantastic issue.
All right, issue number 3 is the conclusion of Sins of the Father. To save his father's life, Starman must again face the Son of the Mist. Each armed with one of Ted Knight's stellar energy weapons, the two combatants battle in the night sky over Opal City, to the death. Meanwhile, the Shade reveals his own agenda, shifting the balance of power in the city. Yeah, so Nash spared him, and then he went and killed her brother.
Yep, sure did. He sure did. And I don't remember if this was in this issue or the one before that, but we mentioned Jack having his memories kind of muddled.
Mm-hmm.
There's a scene where he trades a bunch of comic books to get like a viewfinder or a viewmaster, right? Where those things you put your eye and you click, 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 and you see a little picture. And his brother David is like, it's kid stuff, and Jack's like, well, no, there's stuff with Dad here, there's Justice Society stuff. So David grabs it and he starts clicking through it and says, I'm going to be just like Dad when I grow up. And then he thinks to himself, wait, that's not how it went. And it was actually Jack who said, I'm going to be just like Dad when I grow up.
Right.
Which is really cool. Really cool. I like that a lot because it's just another one of those signs that as they grew into adults, and we're going to see some of that, they kind of went their separate ways in regard to interests, where David did fall more in line with the superhero career, and Jack was doing basically anything he could to be opposite that. Wasting in their eyes, wasting money on stupid crap. Buying a cup, spending a bunch of money on a cup you couldn't drink out of, is one of the things that we saw here. But it's I really like that scene because it's very, very telling, and it's just more of that heart. It shows that Jack isn't this like rebellious cipher. He has a heart here, and he is doing things for a certain reason. There's a reason why he can't go, why he can't leave. His mother's museum wing's already saved, but he's still not gone yet.
Now he's got to get his dad back. His dad's been kidnapped.
Yeah, now his dad's back. Yeah, now his dad's kidnapped. So he's still here. He keeps getting sucked back in. But he's going to stick around for a very long time. But the fight here is pretty cool. When you read a book like this with an artist like Tony Harris here, I don't really think about action, but the action here is great. The action here is really good.
I really liked, you mentioned it before, I really like the conversation he has in the flashback. Cups are for drinking. It's like, no, this was a collectible.
This is a collectible. Yeah.
I love how James Robinson wrote this, in terms of, like, he's forged this identity on wanting to be his own person, but he remembers that at one time he wanted to be like his father. And so much of what is internally driving him is to be accepted by his father, who, because he won't put on the Starman outfit and go be a hero, is irritated with him at best. And I really like all that. I thought there was, like I said, it's not a terribly complex story, but the Mist is out for revenge. That's it. That's the story. And there's a lot of layers to this in terms of interpersonal relationships, which I think is the best stuff in stories.
Absolutely, it gives us a reason to care. If we think the characters care and we think the creators care, then it's very easy for us to care. It's kind of like tipping that first domino.
So this is the issue where he agrees to continue being Starman on like two conditions. One, his father has to dedicate his life to real science, not superhero science. Like, stop making Batman equipment and start using your gifts to better mankind. And he was like, I will help out when there's an obvious reason for me to help. I will not turn a blind eye to nefarious deeds, but I'm not putting on the suit and wandering the city at night, which I loved. I loved that he put his foot down and he was like, I will continue to do this when needed. Other than that, I have a life to live, I have a store to run, I am my own person, and this is the only way this is going to work for me. And the dad's like, okay. And like, I thought that was like a really heartwarming moment between the two, but I also thought it was a very real moment that, that in 4 issues he didn't become a whole other person.
Yeah.
No,
he's still very much his own man, for sure.
So I really liked all of that. Nash suddenly not stuttering and being like, this isn't over.
Mine.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're not stuttering. I'm a different person now.
Yeah, that's very ominous. I'll be curious to see, if I read any more of this, I'll be curious to see what else she does. I guess you said she turns out to be like a big part of this book.
Yeah, and she'll do some things that will shock you. That'll shock you. I don't want to ruin anything, but some good stuff.
All right, so the next 2 issues are sort of one-shot single stories. So before we move on to the...
Do we get the epilogues in this one? Is this the issue with the epilogues with the other Starmen?
Yes.
Okay. This is where we meet Mikhail Tomas, the Bronze Age Starman who appeared like a total of 1 time back in the 70s. James Robinson and I are kind of kindred spirits in that we have this weird appreciation for a series called First Issue Special that ran in the mid-70s. And one of the First Issue Special issues was, let me see here, it was First Issue Special number 11, I think? Maybe it was 11. It was the first appearance of this Mikhail Tomas Starman. And it's this blue-skinned fella here. And he will go on to be a big part of the family of this book. But James Robinson will dig bits and pieces from these first issue specials and bring them into the current day. And these are characters that you would have never seen before. You maybe seen them once if you had that issue of first issue special, because so many of them didn't go anywhere. The only new property to come out of first issue special and actually make anything of itself is Warlord. So that's you have things like, let's see here, Atlas, a Jack Kirby character who went away after this issue, was only brought back in an issue in a story in Superman by James Robinson in 2010 or so. You had the Green Team, Boy Millionaires, which before they were a New 52 thing, were gone for 30 years. Lady Cop, who you never see. She showed up in a couple issues of the Atom back in like 2007. The Dingbats of Danger Street, who never came back until an issue of Adventures of Superman in the mid-90s. Just very, very, very obscure characters here. And I love the fact that Robinson brought this Starman, because the Starman mythos here is going to be examined here. We're going to get some stuff from Prince Gavin. We're going to get stuff from Will Payton. We're going to get stuff from everybody who ever had the name Starman. Kind of controversial because some people don't like that it all ties up so tidily, but I love it. I'm a sucker for lore. I'm a sucker for everything being on the table, so I have a weird appreciation for it. But here in the epilogue, we do see Mikhail Tomas. He's chained up as a circus geek, and he's very much looking the part. We get another epilogue with Will Payton, the Starman from the 80s, who just a few years before this we thought was killed by Eclipso. So he's shown here as being alive, and he's tied up in some sort of futuristic lab of some sort, but he will come back later as well. So really, really cool how we're setting this weird foundation for this book where it's primarily Jack's story, but it's not only Jack's story. We're going to be seeing anybody who was named Starman, anybody who's wielded a star rod will show up and have a part in this volume.
I'm surprised it wasn't like canceled and rebranded as Starman like they did with the Green Lantern.
Oh boy. Yeah, let's hope that they don't bring it back. Don't put that out into the universe.
All right. So the first one shot of this trade. So like I said, we're talking about the trade Sins of the Father, and the trade incorporates issues 0 through 5. The actual Sins of the Father story is 0 through 3, and then there's these two one-shot issues, single stories that finish out the book. So issue number 4, with the fall of the mist, Jack Knight tries putting his life back together, but his attempt to forget Starman proves futile when he receives a disturbing visit from the Golden Age Shade, who reveals strange hidden facets of Opal City. All right, so tell me about this issue. What'd you think of it?
Another one I liked. The Shade here, he's kind of like a cat playing with a mouse. It's very, very funny. Jack, he sticks to his character here. Like, he shows up and he's like, okay, leave. I don't want to see you. You know, you're the Shade. Get out of here. I don't need you in my house.
My favorite part of this issue was the one guy working for, I forget who, but like so Jack's been acquiring antiques and things to fill his junk store, and he ends up with a bunch of Hawaiian shirts, and one of those Hawaiian shirts is the gateway to heaven. He's like, I don't even want this.
I don't even want to look at it.
That was my favorite part of the issue. I'm sorry, I cut you off. I had to share that with you.
No, we'll get to that too. I don't remember if that comes back. I'm assuming it does. It's been so long. But now Shade, his diaries are going to play a big role in this story because it's, I'm a sucker for lore. I'm a sucker for continuity. I'm also a sucker for world building, and they build a wonderful world in this volume, and a lot of that is we're going to see a lot of that in the Shade's diaries here. And he's telling Jack, you got to read this. You got to read this. And Jack's like, it's like, what makes you think I can even read in the first place? It's like, I don't want to read and I can't read. So just get out of my house. But what was the deal they made here? What did Jack ask the Shade to do? I don't remember.
Well, I know what the Shade wanted was for him to read his journal.
Yeah, so what did Jack say? What was the deal, though? God, what was it? I don't remember it. Damn it. Was it just keeping Opal City safe? Was it?
Yeah, I know that they have an exchange of something like, if I wanted to kill you, I would have. That's not what I'm here for. There's things you need to know. I've been keeping journals. I've been around a lot longer than you think. You need to read my journals. And it's like, if you read my journals, there's not going to be any trouble.
Yeah.
And I think that was it.
Okay, yeah, because they're going to have a lot of these meetings as the volume continues here. But with this freaking goofball with the Hawaiian shirts, man, he looks like a Grant Morrison character. He looks like someone who would be in the Invisibles or something. This weirdo. And I love the fact that Jack's like, he's like, I don't want it, but you're not going to steal it from me. It's like, well, what if I buy it? And he's like, okay, you can buy it if you can find it. It's in the back room. Don't even show it to me. Just go get it. I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
I don't remember where it's headed. I'm assuming it's heading somewhere, but I don't remember exactly where it goes. But yeah, a fun issue, a nice way to catch our breath here after Sins of the Father, and a nice buffer between Sins of the Father and the next issue, which is a little heavier.
Yeah, this one kind of came out of nowhere. Issue number 5. This is the one. I don't even have to read the synopsis on this one. He basically wakes up in this black and white universe. He's in a graveyard, and the only thing that's color is his dead brother, who won't tell him why he's there. And they have this. The whole issue is them talking and fighting.
That's it. Yeah. Now, this is the first Talking with David issue. You'll notice that I think it's called Talking with David 95. Let me double check here. I believe it's Talking with David 95. So for 1995, every year there's going to be an issue of this. So for the entire run of this book, there's probably 6 or 7 of these Talking with David issues, and they're always a treat because you get to see Jack kind of decompress a little bit, kind of just digest everything that's going on, because there's going to be some hairy stuff coming. But here, he's still dealing with the loss of his brother, and here he is faced off with his brother, and his brother's being kind of a dick. And it's And it's funny because it kind of plays into Jack's narrative, Jack's figure of his brother, of being this sort of pompous dickhead who was always better than him. And that's why it's so awesome how it ends, where they beat the crap out of one another. They destroy this graveyard, and it's about to become daybreak. So David's like, "Hey, I gotta go. I'm a dead guy. It's gonna be daytime soon. I gotta go." And they stop and have this weird little touching bit at the end where David talks about how much he envied Jack's ability to be his own guy. Jack not going directly into the family business just because that's what's expected of you. Jack did everything the other way. Jack has a rooster tattooed on his ass, apparently.
It's a phoenix.
But it looks like a rooster. But it's really cool here, and it captures brothers really, really well. Because I think that, I have a brother, and I would venture to say he's probably jealous of me as much as I'm jealous of him, because we're so different, but we come from the same place, and I think we see each other as being what we should be, and I think that's very common in siblings, common in families. So I love this issue for that fact, where Jack, he's been driven insecure by his father and his brother. He's been made to think that he doesn't measure up, that he's not part of the family, basically. He's an outsider. And then we find out from David that he wishes he could have been more of an outsider. He wishes he could have been as free a spirit as Jack. And and the weird thing is, their fates are pointed at the same exact thing, and that's the Starman mantle. It's just that the paths they take to get there is what defines them, and they both think that they're doing it the wrong way, and then they get this weird kind of justification that the other one thinks that they did it the wrong way. So it's really, really cool issue, and a wonderful way to end this volume, because the sky's the limit after this, and I love that it ends with I'll see you in a year, and they actually do it. They actually do revisit this every year after that.
Ah. So overall, I would say the trade Sins of the Father issues 0 through 5 were a very good read. I really enjoyed it. I thought this was a really great choice for you to pick for us to read in the month of November, and I would be interested in reading more of this series.
Oh, I hope you do. I know time is a premium for all of us, but yeah, this is a good one. This is one of those that DC's kept as an evergreen for a reason. And usually, if you talk to people about the not their favorite '90s comics, but the best '90s comics, Starman's usually in that list, and with good reason.
So, Chris Sheehan Month rolls on. Now, the next one, I did give him some guidance. I said, hey, we're doing, on the TV party, Jesse and I are going to talk Doom Patrol Season 2, which I love Doom Patrol Season 1. I thought it was one of my favorite shows of last year. So, because we're doing another Doom Patrol, and I know that you were a big Doom Patrol fan, I said, Chris, why don't you go ahead and pick the book we're going to do? And you picked Crawling from the Wreckage. So that's what we're going to talk about next week. If you listen to our previous show, we sort of hashed this out on the show. We're looking at a really weird one called Marvel. That's on the 23rd. We're doing 2 shows that week. That one I'm doing with you, and then I'm doing a comic strip with Jesse, as we're going to read the Morrison Hotel graphic novel that's due out tomorrow, November 10th, and we're going to listen to The Doors' Morrison Hotel. So that'll be fun. It'll be kind of a mixed, instead of
mixed media.
Comparing a movie to a book, we're comparing the album to the book. So it's kind of a Metal Hammer of Doom / source material. That'll be fun. And then we end the month of November with Jeffrey Dahmer, an unauthorized biography. There's a comic book of this, and you picked it.
Oh, by Hart Fisher. Yes, Hart Fisher, one of my heroes in the comics industry, a First Amendment warrior, a guy who literally puts his money where his mouth is, a guy who had the CBLDF turn up their noses at him because I don't think they thought they could win that case. Hart Fisher is a badass, and really, he's a guy that should be talked about more when it pertains to the First Amendment and creators' rights and so many things. Because I can almost guarantee you that the Jeffrey Dahmer book won't be very good, but the story behind it and what came out of it is utterly fascinating. And the stuff that this poor guy had to go through in the wake of it. I mean, his house was robbed and broken into. The news media told people that he wasn't going to be home. He was on Sally Jesse Raphael where they got into a big argument. He was on whatever that thing that Maury Povich had back in the 80s, a Current Affair, was it? Yeah, he was on that. He was on Larry King, and they were just running him up a pole for daring to do this Jeffrey Dahmer book. And he has a hell of a story. He got into a legal battle with O.J. Simpson during the murder trial. Wild story. Me and Reggie did a whole episode on Hart Fisher's life over on the Cosmic Treadmill. It was, to date, the longest research that I'd ever done. I clocked in between 70 and 80 hours of research on this one man. And I still feel like I only, chipped the tip of the iceberg. It's hell of a story. Can't wait to talk about that. Can't wait to talk about Hart Fisher again, because he's a hell of a dude, hell of a talent. And he listened to our show and liked it a lot. So there's that.
And if you can't get enough of that Chris Sheehan, he and the other podsman, Chris Bailey, will be joining me to talk Survivor Series on November 24th. So that's what we got going on. I mentioned before, Chris Bailey and I reviewed AEW Full Gear today. So that's in the archives. That comes a day early. It was originally scheduled for Tuesday. Last week, Chris and I talked Hellstorm, Son of Satan, Equinox. I can't say enough good things about Robert Winfrey and Andrew Graham. They did an election coverage podcast Tuesday night last week during the election, and it went about 3 to 4 hours. They're really smart guys. It was a fun show to listen to, and regardless of how you feel about the election, it's worth listening to them kind of talk about. They have their beliefs and practices, but I thought they were very fair all around, and as is our wont on this network, they were very liberal in their criticism of the media and how the media handles things. So it's worth a listen. I listened to it the other day while I was at work, and they did a really, really good job. I wasn't a part of it because I was having technical difficulties, and then when I couldn't fix it, I threw a tantrum. So I missed out this year, but that's okay. I don't think my jaw at that particular day would have held up anyway.
There you go.
And then myself and Alexis Haina reviewed the craptacular Hulu original Hellstrom.
It was no good?
Yeah, not great. So you can listen to us.
Any dicks in a box?
No dick in a box from what they impregnate a nun, though, with a demon, I think.
There you go.
So that's fun. Yeah, that's 30 minutes of me and Alexis trying to figure out what the hell we're going to say about this garbage show. Some shows easily are an hour. Some don't, only make it 30 minutes because what can you possibly say? That was one of them. All right, go ahead and do your plugs and we'll get out of here.
Okay, you can find my audio exploits at chrisandreggie.podbean.com, where today I put out the 400th program on that channel. We launched the channel in 2016 or so in that time between then and now, the interim, I guess that's the word, there have been 400 programs there. And today was X-Lapsed episode 59, where I talked about Wolverine Volume 7, number 1, which was a very long book and a fairly boring one. But hopefully people will listen and enjoy what I have to say about it. There's also show notes and blog posts aplenty over at chrisisoninfiniteearth.com. So chrisisoninfiniteearth.com and chrisandreggie.podbean.com.
All right, folks, thanks for joining us here on Source Material Live. For Mr. Sheehan of the Cosmic Treadmill, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.
See ya.